It's a full boat for the Pick Six podcast this week with Sam McKewon, Jimmy Watkins. This is Evan Bland with the Omaha World-Herald coming to you on Minnesota week. Nebraska heading out to the land of 10,000 lakes at 3-4 at the end of 8 straight games before that sweet carrot of a bye week after that.
Yeah.
The first
sweet
thing
carrot for all of us.
For all of us,
you.
no doubt. I'm curious. I was thinking about PJ Fleck and kind of what he brings to this thing. What's a good slogan for this game? Because he's all about the slogans, and that was about as close as Nebraska got to, I don't know, into a tiff at Big Ten Media Days. Remember that when Scott Frost said he's not into sloganeering?
Yeah,
he followed PJ Fleck.
It's a great word.
What's some good sloganeering for this game? Do you guys think?
I don't know. That's vengeance.
I'm thinking like something about not letting the boat take on too much water, something like that.
Well, that's Minnesota's slogan.
But yeah, I'm trying to turn it around, like plug the holes for Nebraska. Just don't capsize, something like that.
Tugboat. I don't know. I like the word boat just in general, so I just like saying it. I like the way it comes out.
This is how you know we need a bye week. We're talking about the way the word boat sounds.
Oh, no. This just missed me. I'll talk like that on the bye week too, Jimmy. It won't change. I'm just a strange person when it comes to words. Boat. Boat.
I like the word waffle. Yeah, it's very I don't know. There's a lot of energy to that word. Like you can't say that word and be in a bad mood. Like waffle. You just can't do it. It's a happy sort of word.
Remarkably enough, it is about someone who is not certain.
Right. Exactly right. So there you go. I've heard the advice that you want to skip, like 2 minutes into every podcast. Maybe this is an example of that. Maybe you like the banter. It's hard to say. Well, let's jump right into it here. To me, the big red idea this week is progress. Mm-hmm. So, is Nebraska making enough of it? On the one hand, you have their current record, 3-4. You have Scott Frost's record in one-score games at Nebraska, 5-16. Which continued in their field goal loss to Michigan last week. On the other hand, they've been competitive with Oklahoma, Michigan State, Michigan, taking them right down to the wire. 3 teams that are unbeaten and highly ranked. Do you see, is this enough progress to this point for Nebraska?
I would say intangible progress. They've made a decent amount. What they were saying at the end of it, we got to take them at their word, right? That they all believed that they were going to win the game on that last drive. That's progress. That's not how it always was. Evan and I were talking before the podcast about the tenor of the post-game press conferences this week. More optimistic, more aspirational. Still a lot of that, we're so close, but not so much, we're so close, and damn it, why aren't we closer? We're so close, and we're closer than we've ever been because we're so close against these very good teams that we're playing against. Right. So intangible progress for sure, but tangible progress, TBD. They still are losing these games close. They still to be seen whether they're going to top their program best for wins under Frost thus far. They need 3 more to do that. So yes and no, sort of.
You have to take into context, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the teams are playing matter. We talked about this conversation last week. Do you want to be Nebraska or do you want to be Wake Forest? Nebraska would be 6-0 if they had a Wake Forest schedule. I believe that. Maybe 5-1. Okay. So would that be progress because they had more wins?
Tangibly, yeah.
And that's.
But both progresses matter.
This is the thing.
I think intangible progress leads to tangible progress.
This is the thing. This is the hard thing. Is like in football, we have basically this, right? In baseball, they have plus run differential, plus minus run differential. And you can sit there and say, well, that baseball team might have won only one more game than it did last year, but look at the run differential. They're coming. You can see it. I think in Nebraska's case, and this is challenging in college, this team's a lot better than the 2019 team. They're 3-4. The 2019 team going into the bye week was 4-3.
Sounds right. Yep.
So that team had one more win, but they beat a terrible Northwestern team in 2019, 13-10. They beat a terrible Northwestern team this year, 56-7. So, yeah, I think there's progress. Back for a second to Saturday night. I mean, I haven't had that feeling in Memorial Stadium in a long time. I haven't. I mean, you've been covering it with us since when? 17. Have you ever had that feeling inside Memorial Stadium since you were covering it?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. For me, it goes back to maybe 2016 Oregon, the end of that game, 2014 Miami. The feeling that you had that night, the caliber of football on the field, you felt that. When they played Missouri in 2010, when they played Michigan State in 2011, the caliber of the football, the feeling in the stadium, the confidence of not only the players and the fans, that's worth something. I don't know if you can bottle it up and you can take it somewhere, but there is a kind of sense that, and we can dive in a little bit to some of the issues that they've had since Frost got there, especially with 2-minute drills or whatever. But to me, the big picture is this team much more looks the part. Much like last year's Nebraska basketball team, only won 7 games. People who watched the first team and watched the second team were like, well, the second team's better. They didn't win any more games, but they're better, and that was obvious. And the numbers meted that out. You didn't have these 37, 33, 31-point losses. So I think the progress is there even a little bit tangibly. The problem is they're playing really, really good teams. And one of those teams is Michigan State. They're way better than I thought. And I still think Nebraska's better than Michigan State.
I don't think – is Michigan State I think –
they're much better than anyone thought.
Definitely, but I don't know if they're the 10th best team in the country.
I'm not sure. No. Their offense is way better than I anticipated, and so that's the thing that makes me wonder if they're actually pretty darn good. But they're probably going to go 8-4 or 9-3. They're probably going to lose 3 or 4 games down the stretch. But I had that team going 4-8. So, Nebraska's had that challenge. And then Oklahoma's a tough team. I don't know if they're a great team, but they're tough. And I think Michigan's pretty good. I mean, I thought Nebraska, punched them really good in the mouth there in the third quarter, and Michigan's like, F you. We're coming right back at you. That was a good team. They were resilient. They could have laid down. Penn State laid down, even though they got hurt. Their quarterback got hurt. Penn State kind of had a dip, and I thought Michigan did a really good job of keeping their energy up and surging through the end of that game. So.
I think the other thing that really stands out, and we've talked with players about this for a couple weeks now, is their ability to bounce back. Like previous Nebraska teams, had they lost in some of these close manners, would have folded. And that hasn't been the case. Like through Oklahoma and Michigan State, the consensus has been they have gotten more confident and figured things out more so.
Yeah, they were talking today about how they had the practice after Oklahoma, and that was like a light bulb moment for them.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, Jimmy, the post game, even though we had like 10 minutes to write because it was a crazy tight deadline, it was, I thought, noticeably different from a lot of the other losses. I mean, Frost came out and he said, that was the most fun I had coaching a game. And then, you hear in the days after that Trev Alberts, the AD, was down there congratulating the assistants on what they did and talking with players. And so it felt like a team that knew that it put it all out there and it didn't work out, but that they do have some momentum still. And it's a weird thing when you lose 3 or 4 the way they have, and when you're still fighting an uphill battle to make a bowl game. But it feels like they're comfortable in their own skin for the first time under this current coaching staff. They're comfortable with who they are. They're comfortable, I guess, with the stakes. I don't think that's always been the case either. And so I get it. It feels to me like this team still is going to have a moment this year, that sort of breakthrough moment that's eluded them for so long. Whereas, again, in the past, maybe this is where the wheels come off and things really get out of control.
And you juxtapose that with the way that they and everyone else were feeling after Illinois and Michigan State, and Scott's sitting there saying, we have a punter on the team specifically, or we have a punter at the university specifically to punt. And it just, the vibes were so different. It was like a funeral. It was a devastation to the losses at Illinois and Michigan State that there was not with this game.
That special team stuff, man. as hard as the fumble was on Saturday, I think there was probably a sense of they should have whistled that dead man. And
Well, and also Martinez played so well before
Michigan
that.
made a football play. The thing with the punting, we've been over this. It's vexing to coaches because they can't control it. It's just the only thing they could have controlled was that William Prista should have been out there punting instead of Daniel Cherney, and they haven't used Cherney since.
Right.
And I don't think they should. I mean, Prista's doing a good job, and this whole let's bring him out there to do some directional kick, whatever. It's fine. I think they probably got a little too whatever when they pulled Prista in that Michigan State game, but I mean, I think it's a team that when you look at where they're at, it does feel like there's a distinct amount of, confidence. Maybe not necessarily excitement, but confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Although it noted me today, I wasn't over there, but I heard that Deontay Williams said this wasn't his kind of game because he'd rather play pass defense.
Sure.
And that's an interesting comment to make. Probably wouldn't have been the one I would have made, but
With 5 Big Ten games left to play.
Well, and you got to play what you got to play. I mean, that's Minnesota. I mean, that's catnip to Minnesota. Good. See, guys, they don't want to play this. They don't want to play us. They don't want to play us. They don't want to have to deal with this, zone run 55 times. So you're already inside their heads. They want a fun game, and we're not going to give them fun. Like you can use that
Sure.
to your advantage. But Nebraska's very candid. They have a lot of candor, this team, these players, even Frost. So that's kind of the way they roll.
The only other point, and we kind of talked about this too, Jimmy, was like this last month, if nothing else, has really died down the conversation of a coaching change. Like there's been enough progress, it seems, that any talk about finding a different coach has kind of gone off the table. Not to say that something couldn't happen in the last 5 games, but when you talk about enough progress to the people that matter that are making the decisions, Trev Alberts, the university leadership, it does feel like that at the very least is going to be tabled. That's a sort of to be continued thing that maybe won't be on the radar the rest of this year.
I wanted to read you Trev Alberts' quote from this is an ESPN story. Now Trev's talked to all of us, so this is ESPN comes in, they're going to get a little bit of access. So they talked to Frost and Trev, and I thought this quote was interesting. It reiterates what they say the local media, which I think is interesting as it relates to coaching change. Trev said, "I'm never going to be the person that says he's coaching for his job. We don't do that. I've never said you must win this many games or you're fired. And I told Scott, we're on the same page. We're working together. I want to see growth. I'm seeing growth. I'm proud of it. I think Scott is a really good coach. I don't know what happened the last 3.5 years. All I'm worried about is right now, and I'm really proud of how our coaches and assistant coaches have attacked this year. But it's hard to make a judgment on anything right now." And then he says, I'm proud of Scott. Scott's working really hard. I've seen Scott grow and mature. Again, he's been there for 3 months. The reality is none of us are finished products. If we get everybody operating from their position this break, we're going to be pretty good. I'm not sure we administratively were always very helpful in that area, and that's my job. So I think from Trev's perspective, and I've talked to him a few times too, whatever was going on before he got there was so unhelpful and counterproductive that from Trev's perspective, Frost is basically an unfinished head coach. And that whatever happened at UCF doesn't really matter either. You're in the Big Ten now. It's much harder. It's much more challenging. Hence, we have the situation we've got. And so I think some of it is that Trev has successfully turned the burner down. He didn't come in and leave Frost twisting in the wind. Like he didn't say, he's not one time said it'd be, I'd like to see us make a bowl.
Right.
He hasn't said that. So I think he turned the burner down a little bit. I think the burner go back up if they lose at Minnesota. There's no money. There's no more. Shucks. We we really just didn't play well today. Game's on the schedule. Can't do it. You have to, from here on out, they really have to play good football, and they have to beat the teams that are, marginal or middling. If Nebraska's the team they say they are, they will beat Minnesota.
And Purdue.
Yeah.
The other part that stands out to me about that Alberts quote is, I think from the outside you can look at the situation at Nebraska and say, Scott Frost wasn't the guy that Alberts hired. He's going to be on a short leash here.
That's right.
When really what I hear him saying is, I wasn't here for those 3 years. I'm going to give him grace for whatever growth or dysfunction or whatever occurred and just grade him based on what's going on this year. And if that's the case, that's a great situation for Scott Frost to be in, as he, you essentially get those years not to count against you, I suppose, in an evaluation sort of situation, and you just, with a new AD, have this year and forward to be evaluated. I think that's a unique sort of position to be in.
Agreed. I think there's also been some changes. I think he's working harder. I think he's probably working beyond because the AD's in there on Sunday. I'm not saying he wasn't working hard before, but he's mentioned multiple occasions. I did not watch Mackenzie Milton. I was working.
We buying that? Like someone texts, like Scott's phone is blowing up while that game.
I think you can watch the game and work at the same time, but I don't know.
I think it's totally possible he wasn't watching the game,
well,
but when he gets a lot of text saying, "Oh my God, look at what this dude that you consider," he said he considers him family.
Right.
This guy you consider family is pulling off this incredible achievement against Notre Dame on national television. TV's on. Sorry.
I get that. But the comment he made yesterday about not going to church and shouldn't have done that, but I was working. I think there's a sense that everybody, I think the ante or the whatever has been turned way up in the last 6 to 8 months. And you just sense that. You just sense that around the program, everything's a little bit tighter and a little bit more buttoned up and a little less, aside from that week against Illinois where they were weird the whole week. The press conferences were weird. All of that stuff was weird. They haven't been that way since. They've been very loose and they've been very confident and focused. And the guys aren't having. There's not a lot of wide ranges or anything like that. And so I feel like there's something there that has changed for the positive. And I think they're a little bit more business-like than they were just 7 weeks ago.
Do we have a theory as to why the weirdness was happening before Illinois? I don't. I'm just curious what you.
Some of the stuff with the NCAA,
okay.
and I just think that there was just a lot of just changes going on. A lot of worry about that game. I think, which obviously showed up when they played, because I thought they played tentative and a little bit scared, and not scared, but just tentative and tight, and a lot of things. But I think the summer. I think the last 7 or 8 months, so from January up until, they lost to Illinois, I think there was just a lot of tightness within the program, Jimmy. I just think there was a lot of, the OU thing, and there's been various thoughts running around, and Coach, Jared leaving, which I think had to happen. There's just a lot of different things Bill Moose leaving, which I didn't think had to happen, but I think has been good since they got Trev. I feel like there's just a sense of cohesiveness there. I don't know if it's going to pan out into wins. They still got to go do it on Saturday, and there's only so much Scott Frost can control when they get out there. It's the players. The players got to do it. So we'll see if they're ready to roll. Minnesota. I don't like the way this game fits Nebraska. I don't like how it fits the eye of Nebraska football. I just don't. Minnesota's a tough opponent. That comment, that's not my kind of game. Okay, I don't know. Okay,
yeah.
It tells you something about how they feel about playing this team.
Well, how
they
about
don't love playing this team.
Levi Falk, I don't like Minnesota.
No, they don't. Well, the whole program is.
Right, but it doesn't necessarily help to say that either.
It can't, for him it's personal because he's from there and they didn't recruit him.
Do you think PJ Fleck is going to give the context to that quote? When he reads it to the locker room? Probably not. I would guess.
Probably not, but I don't think Minnesota likes Nebraska, so it's mutual. I think this will probably end up being, in some ways, Nebraska's rival. They don't like this team. This is their Missouri. This is their, if Wisconsin is, I don't know, and Iowa's Oklahoma, this is their Missouri. You know what I mean?
I do.
Like this is a team they don't care for, they don't appreciate at all, and some of it goes back to the coach.
Personality, culture, it all clashes.
2018 spreading, sprinkling sand on the field and at Memorial Stadium, strange stuff.
Right.
Comments that have been made, little veiled jabs. There was a recruit who was recruited by both programs, who went up to Fleck, and was up there, and Fleck flipped out because he didn't really know much about him. We've heard that story. And then there's another recruit, who was going to visit, multiple schools, and I think it was conveyed to him, well, a lot of these schools are good, but, that school up there up north,
Mm-hmm.
So there's a feeling between these two programs. And there's nothing but respect between Nebraska and Iowa's coaching staffs. There's a lot of respect for Ferentz. And some of that, I think, is Chinander. I mean, it should be. He's an Iowa guy. And, Chinander has a lot of respect for them because he was at UNI. But Minnesota's, that's not there. These two programs don't like each other. Minnesota is more of an East Coast program in the Big Ten, kind of an East Coast vibe. And Nebraska is absolutely a plain state Midwestern program.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, we can get into Minnesota next. So where does this game fall on sort of that must-win scale, right? Nebraska's at 3 wins. They need to get to 6 to make bowl eligibility. And I don't know. I mean, you talk about, Sam, about this not meeting the eye test. It's an 11 a.m. kick. Nebraska's playing the final of 8 straight. Minnesota's coming off of a bye week. Does it kind of have that sleepy trap game sort of feel to it? Is it more just the personnel matchups and the scheme clashings? What kind of makes you uneasy about this particular encounter?
The start, the crowd, the way that Minnesota plays, the fact that they can kill a game with their style. The first half can be over the game kicks off at 11. The first half's over at 12:20. And you had the ball 3 times, and you scored 10 points, and it's 10-10, and maybe you got 79 more yards, but the game's tied. Like, it just doesn't feel, the game goes real fast with them. They eat clock. They're that style can lose you a game against Bowling Green, which it did, or it can beat a team like Nebraska. So. I think there's always an uneasiness there. I don't think Nebraska loves playing teams like this. They want to speed teams up. They want to go fast. And so it becomes imperative that if you go on defense first, that you get a stop right away. Like, that first drive can't go for 7 minutes and 13 seconds and end in a field goal.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So that's important.
I think it's on the must-win scale. It's relatively high. I mean, every game is relatively high at this point if you're trying to make a bowl, especially with Ohio State and Iowa looming in the background. But I think this is probably, I would put it as the second most winnable game left on the schedule. I think Wisconsin and Minnesota are similarly challenged if you could put them behind, but I trust Wisconsin's defense more, and Camp Randall's probably a little bit harder place to play. So, yeah, this is an important game. You got to go up there and beat a team that is down to its third-string running back and hasn't shown a ton of trust in its passing game. The formula's there. Go take it. It's pretty simple.
I thought the 3 to 4 point line that Vegas put on this game was interesting because it feels like the sentiment is, well, Nebraska should roll Minnesota. They lost to Bowling Green. Nebraska blew out Northwestern. They've been competitive against all these top 25 teams. And so if you're Nebraska and you translate that or carry that over to Minneapolis, they should win fairly handedly.
Yeah. I also think to Sam's point about the style, while Minnesota's style can bring you closer to an opponent where you're maybe talent-wise aren't that close. I think that if Nebraska stops the run effectively, the blowout potential is very high.
Yeah, I agree.
So, to your point, Evan.
It's just it's a hard team to read in Minnesota. I think it's like as nuanced as sort of the Nebraska evaluation is that we discussed. Minnesota's all over the place. They shut out Colorado, lose at home to Bowling Green,
and that was a good win.
They're coming off. Sure,
30-0 over Colorado is as
Absolutely.
good as 56-7 over Northwestern. It is.
I mean, to think about how wide that spectrum is from that win to a home loss to Bowling Green.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very wide range. You think about the fact that they're down to their third string and fourth string running backs, that they have a quarterback who's generally trustworthy in Tanner Morgan, but it just hasn't looked like
Not
the
against
same.
Bowling Green.
He's as good
offense.
as the guys he usually has. I mean, they didn't have Ottman Bell, and they didn't have the Texas A&M transfer. I think Dylan Wright is his name. They didn't have either one of those guys, I think, in the Bowling Green game. So he's kind of as good as the guys he's got around him. He's not going to screw up a lot, but he's also not going to run around and make the Adrian Martinez play. That said, Tanner Morgan's outplayed Nebraska's quarterbacks the last 2 years, and it's really not close.
Well, and that's the other thing to consider is the recent history with these teams. The 2019 infamous hoodie game, Nebraska, and Scott Frost said it this week. They played uninspired football in the cold, dark night of Minneapolis 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That was the Noah Vedral game, right, where Martinez warmed up or appeared to warm up, and then he didn't play.
Yeah.
And then, of course, last year, which was as ugly of a loss as Nebraska had, when Minnesota's down 33 players because of COVID or injuries, 10-point underdogs, and they still come into Lincoln and win. Isn't it? I think it's been kind of interesting. I haven't heard much talk about that game at all this week. Have you? Like, that hasn't been, that wasn't asked to players.
More the other one.
That hasn't been really chewed on much, was what happened last year. And maybe that's because fans weren't in the stands. Maybe that's because, I don't know. I feel like in a typical year, we'd be focusing a lot more on, wow, remember how terrible a loss that was for Nebraska last year? And it just feels like it's been kind of out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, I think that the other one sticks more in their mind, the 2019 game. Minnesota has beaten Nebraska in 2013, in 2017, and in 2019 up there. So they're 2-3. They're 3-2 against Nebraska at now Huntington Bank Stadium. So and two of those losses, well, actually all three of them were beatings. Like, Minnesota beat a good Nebraska team by 11, and it wasn't that close. Then they beat Nebraska. He humiliated Nebraska 54-21 in 2017, and then they humiliated Nebraska 34-7 in 2019. So it's, I think that they have that they have the game from 2 years ago lodged in their brain, and I think they've wiped pretty much everything from their memory from last year.
I was just going to say, someone did get asked about it. It might have been Adrian, and there was kind of like a throwaway comment is, they were talking about how bad of a loss it was, but then they said, but it was a COVID year. So I think that's probably where that comes from. Everyone kind of wants to write that year off, but I agree with you, Evan. I mean, it was a COVID year for everyone, but not everyone on the field was down to 40 players that day. That's pretty brutal.
Yeah, interesting. So one other thing, and this is kind of an offshoot of the progress discussion a little bit. I was thinking about this. I'd be curious on your guys' thoughts. So we talk about identity and how maybe Nebraska's finding that offensively and defensively. First of all, do you think it is finding that? And second of all, if you do think it is, I'm curious how much of it do you think is rooted in personnel, existing personnel, and how much of it is sustainable into the future? For example, will Nebraska mix in the option with Logan Smothers or Heinrich Harburg in 2 years? Will Nebraska have the ability to do what it does on defense when JoJo Doman and a couple sixth-year safeties move on? Like, do you feel like this is sort of the top of that mountain right now because of the personnel they have, or can this be sustainable over the course of the next few years?
Go ahead and start, Jimmy. I've got an answer to that, but go ahead.
I think offensively, Adrian is sort of a singular player, particularly to the option point. You can run the option with Logan Smothers. Logan Smothers can run. He's not Adrian Martinez with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, he is. As a runner? Yes, he is.
You think? Elusiveness and all?
As running the option?
Yeah.
He'll be better.
He'll be better.
Better.
Okay.
Yeah. Not scrambling up and around
maybe
the field.
That's, okay.
No. He's not as good of an open field scrambler. So if you're going straight up the field in your pocket and you're elusive and you're trying to beat guys in the pocket, no. Running that option, yeah. I feel real good about what he could do in that. Really good. You don't?
I haven't seen enough
But
of it against starters.
But you're confident that he wouldn't be as good. I'm telling you.
I am confident that he wouldn't be as good.
Why do you say that?
He will.
Because Adrian Martinez has been carving up Big Ten defenses
He
with
has.
it, and I don't know that. I need to see that from Logan Smothers.
Well, I mean, the Betts play was a formational. That long play was a beautiful formation and a beautiful setup. And so, Matt Masker could have pitched that ball against Northwestern. But
Does Matt Masker or Logan Smothers have as many eyes on him as Adrian Martinez does? Like, no one. I don't think I don't know.
Are we talking about running the option, or are we talking about when you go back in the pocket and we scrambling around?
I'm talking about running the option because a lot of the option stuff, it has to do with all these teams are terrified of what Adrian can do with his legs.
Yeah.
So when he fakes that when he fakes that handoff, people are looking at him.
Yeah.
When he pitches that ball, it matters because everyone knows he can go 70 yards with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty confident Smothers can do all that.
Okay.
He's a straight line burner. I mean, Smothers was a top-notch sprinter in high school.
I'm going to give you a straight answer. I'm not giving you a contrarian answer.
Sure.
If you're asking me what my scouting report of Logan Smothers is, running the option, that option is the thing he can do really well. Standing back in the pocket and throwing it 50 yards? No. Scrambling with a, what do you call it, 360, not 360, but a full view and trying to make guys miss? No. And those are the things Adrian does really well. Adrian is one of the best through the pocket scramblers that I've around. He's unbelievable. And part of it's because you can't gauge his speed because he's able to modulate his speed and kind of able to go around. But Smothers will be a very, very good option quarterback. Yeah. To me, Logan is, who does he remind you of? Taylor as a runner.
Yeah, as a straight line sprinter. Yeah. Yes, that's true. And Taylor didn't have a ton of shake and bake in the pocket either.
Although he could run them up the middle too. So continue.
Okay. Defensively, my point in saying in making that point was the offensive identity is in question because when you change quarterbacks, if they change quarterbacks, something will change, right?
Whenever that happens.
Defensively, I think the structure is in place. We've talked a lot on this podcast about how structurally Chenander has done a good job of identifying what other teams do well and positioning the defense to take those things away. The defensive players talk a lot about we don't have to do anything fancy. We just have to do our 1/11th. I know that's football speak to the nth degree, but there's an element of truth to it if your defensive coordinator knows what he's doing. Sure. That being said, I think the idea that they're losing a bunch of guys who've been in that system for so long definitely matters because if it's easy to say all you have to do is follow your rules when you've been following those rules since you were 18 and now you're an adult. It's different when you're newer at it. So the identity is there. The ceiling will be lower on the defense. Offense, I have questions about the identity. Option-wise, we're always going to still run the option, whether Martinez was there or not. I think a lot of the vertical passing stuff might change. We'll see on that front.
I guess I would say defensively, the more I kind of look at where Nebraska is going, the more it seems that the COVID year did them a ton of favors in that regard. I mean, just talking today with Deontay Williams and Eric Chenander, I mean, they both mentioned how under different circumstances they'd feel great about guys like Miles Farmer starting or Braxton Clark starting at corner or Noah Pulagates starting at safety, and they're not. They don't have to because they have the luxury of depth. And so I think it's sort of expedited the process to where guys can learn the system for 2 or 3 years, play on special teams, and by the time they step in, Nebraska's finally not to the point where it has to put in a freshman or a sophomore. It can put in someone who's well-versed in the system. And so I think, that's been helpful. You're seeing that at the defensive line too. I mean, there are guys who are going to be good players that aren't playing much right now, like Nash Hutmacher is a good example. We haven't seen him much
Right.
at all in 2 years, and he's having time to build up physically and learn the system. That's what you want. The Doman position, I suppose, is interesting. They keep saying Isaac Gifford, Javen Wright are two guys that they trust in that
I heard
spot
Caleb Tanner before the season too.
as sort of a coverage or
Yeah.
to the line sort of guy. Yeah, but he's getting older in terms of eligibility too. So, yeah, I mean, I feel better about the defensive side. Offensively, the Adrian Martinez discussion is just so complicated and nuanced because by the end of his career, whether that's in a month or two or next year, he's going to own a ton of significant Nebraska offensive records.
Sure.
He's a very easy guy to root for because
Yeah.
of how he carries himself. But the wins haven't been there. There's always been the conversation about coming up short in the big moment, the big drive, just like against Michigan last week. And so I wonder how much of the gains they've made on offense will carry over when you have a new quarterback, even if it's a quarterback like Logan Smothers, who's been in the system or will have been in the system for 2 or 3 years by that time. I wonder if we almost underappreciate even still the impact that Martinez has had on what this offense has become.
Those are good thoughts. I agree with both of you. I mean, defensively, that's a good point. I think they've got a general structure that they want to use, right? So I think they've got a sense of what they want to do. They put 4 down sometimes. Sometimes it's 3. They'd love to have an adjuster defensively, a Jojo Doman, whatever they call that guy, a nickel, a peso, an adjuster player. Not sure they're going to find somebody as good as Doman, but Isaac Gifford's probably the next guy up. That seems to be what they want to do. There's been some chatter about potentially having, Wyndon Hoahuli become a pass rusher. He's been banged up this year. We'll see. I do wonder about where the what you would call the havoc and dynamic plays come from. I think
Aren't we worried about that now?
yeah. I mean, I think it's been an ongoing issue. And, there's lots of different philosophies about how you do it. Can you scheme it up? I think you can. I think we saw Eric Chenander do that a lot, Jimmy, in his first year here. I mean, they had a lot more aggressive, exotic blitzes, and they didn't get home. And it honestly cost them a game, I think, at Northwestern that year. And the defining play in the Iowa game, the second to last play, was a 7-man pressure with T.J. Hawkinson working against Antonio Reed. Hawkinson beat him to the inside. It's exactly what Nebraska didn't have on Saturday night on 4th and 10. I think the Hawkinson play was 4th and 7. Well, I mean, it was a distance.
Yep, that's right.
And it was a big, just a big risk for Iowa, and they trusted what
Right
they were
near
going to see.
midfield, yeah.
And Hawkinson made a play, but, I think defensively, they've chosen to do the bend don't break thing, which is part of why Minnesota's not a great matchup, because they're probably not going to put a lot of heat on. Maybe they'll put a lot of heat on Minnesota, but a lot of times they'll stay back. But I think the identity is generally there. Now we talk about pieces. So when we're all sitting around this table next spring, and JoJo's gone, Dismuke's gone, Williams is gone, and I think Cam Taylor-Britt's probably ready to go. He's been starting for 3 years. When those 4 guys are gone, we'll be sitting here talking about Miles Farmer. Can Miles Farmer do this, this, and this? Noah Pola-Gates, can he do that? Who's going to play Doman's role, and what did Doman do, and why was he good at... we'll be talking about it in a way that acknowledges that we understand how all these players function in Nebraska's defense. The offense, I think, is just the way that you guys put it, that it's so personnel-driven that the thing that they came here to do, they don't really do that much of. They don't. That was a 4-wide spread system with an occasional tight end, with a running back who was flexed out, who would either come into the backfield or he would go out. That guy was a receiver. He was as a receiver, and they were throwing the ball sideways a lot, and they were lots of big chunk routes, not throwback, not elaborate throwback, play action pass, go back their plays, but quarterback stands in the pocket and looks for, surveys. They're not that anymore. I like what they are now more than what they were, but I still think you need the pieces. And the question is true about Adrian. It's that's a legitimate question. I think you could run this offense that they're running right now. You could extract the option and put it over here and run that offense with C.J. Stroud, with Cade McNamara. I think you could run it with those guys. I don't think you need Adrian Martinez to do a lot of the big plays that they get. I don't think you need him.
He creates so much off structure, though. A lot of these big plays are him running around, like that Oliver Martin play against Michigan. That's just Adrian Martinez doing it.
And how would I put this? Like, I understand the value, especially like if you watch the NFL, the value of players who are playmakers. I would say that I teeter a little bit more toward your quarterback is your distributor, and the highest ideal of where you're trying to go is Mac Jones at Alabama. That's where, if any offense could conceive itself, they would say what we want there is Mac Jones surrounded by superstars. We don't really want our quarterback to have to do what Patrick Mahomes does. Why? Well, look at Patrick Mahomes on Sunday night. Defenses sooner or later figure out, if you don't have the personnel, they tend to figure out what you're trying to do. There are players who are so good, i.e. Aaron Rodgers, that they can transcend that structure and just do it over and over and over again. But Aaron Rodgers is a unique passer. Like, he is a uniquely gifted player. Better to be, in my opinion, and also the guys that win more, are the Brady and the Manning types who anchor their ass in the pocket. They don't move if they don't have to move. And they distribute from a fixed point of view outward. Because then your offense keeps a structure to it, and there's lots of different things that you can do structurally. We'll see if that's it's like a giant holistic conversation about college football. I'm not kidding. Like, it's a huge conversation. We just watched Oklahoma junk Spencer Rattler for option guy. And Lincoln Riley was like, he tried to do it. He tried to go with the Spencer Rattler fixed point quarterback for as long as he could, and then that guy wasn't working because he doesn't have all the weapons. And you know who they put in the game? They put in Adrian Martinez. Caleb Williams played a lot like Adrian Martinez, didn't he? You watched the game?
He did, yeah, I did. Yeah.
That was an Adrian Martinez performance. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's what Adrian Martinez would probably do if he was at Oklahoma. So in that moment, Lincoln Riley would have been like, I'll take Adrian Martinez over the guy I got. I am probably a little bit more to the side of, and this is a philosophical opinion that I hold, I'd rather have Rattler. I'd rather have the guy that anchors in the pocket, maybe a little taller than Rattler, but anchors in the pocket and throws from a fixed perspective and can move off platform at times, but is not Lamar Jackson, is not, But that's me. That's a philosophical. But your point is well taken.
But I would also, does Nebraska have that guy on the roster?
Well, I think what's interesting is that
maybe
imagine
they don't recruit for it. To be very honest with you, they don't recruit for it. When I say they could run a lot of the things that they run, though, they could. I mean, that throwback play is cool, but you can run that play with a more stationary quarterback. A lot of the stuff that they're doing that's really working is somewhat effective because people are worried about Adrian Martinez running the football. But it is simultaneously effective because it's a lot of misdirection, a lot of hide the ball, and all this other stuff. And
sure,
they do a great job of manipulating coverages over and over.
Right now, at the beginning of the year, it was a lot of Adrian doing stuff.
Well, it was. I think some of that was the line, and
right.
Again, the game that they lost, where their offense looked terrible, Adrian was doing a lot, and they didn't win the game. Right? So he ran for a 75-yard touchdown. He also fumbled and gave up a 37-yard touchdown. That's a net negative. I mean, it's a net zero. So that's not what those are the kind of things that you can look at the yards and you can look at the plays and the yards, but on the other side of the ledger is it was 3rd and 2 with a minute and a half left, and you have to run your quarterback. And what happened? He did what he's done 17 times prior. Now, is that on him? A little. Is that on the officials? Yeah, I put it on the officials about 40%. But then there's about 50% that's on the coaches who darn well know this has happened over and over again. And if you keep running your cubes, this is what happens. Like, that's what happens.
What we're talking about is the complicated legacy of Adrian Martinez. Because if you would have put, if you pulled Martinez out and say that Scott Frost recruited Mac Jones or Spencer Rattler in 2018, and he's been the starter for 3 years, do you think Nebraska is a better team or a worse team?
I don't know, because I think it assumes so many different things about what they want to do as a team that they would have had to recruit differently and they would have had to coach differently. It's hard to say. It's very hard to say. What I feel confident about is if you took Adrian and put him in a program like Ohio State, he would have been really good.
No doubt. And that's kind of my point is like if the Scott Frost regime works out and things take off from here, a lot of the narrative about Adrian has been, he just, he can't come through in the big drives. He's been the thing holding them back. When really, I think you could make the argument that we'll look back someday and say, he was the thing that held things together.
Sure.
Like, it could have been a lot worse. If you have somebody back there who can't scramble and who can't, elongate a play and who can't stay competitive, then this thing really could have gone off the rails, because a guy who sits back there and distributes didn't have a whole heck of a lot of options to do that the last 3 years. So it's a really interesting discussion about him, and I'm sure we'll get into it more after this year when he makes his decision.
Where are you guys at on, do you think he's going to stay? Go? Transfer?
I think if it ends well, I think if let's say they win 4 of the 5 on the way out, I think that's a note on which you can move on to the league. Because I think there comes a point where you've taken enough hits, you've been hurt enough times, your jaw, your leg, your shoulder, your knee. You don't need to keep giving Nebraska. I mean, he's done what he could. And he's not a coach, so he's not getting paid like a coach. You know what I'm saying?
He might be. I think the NIL thing changes the discussion a lot.
It changes it some. I don't know if he's making $300,000. I don't know.
He might be.
He might.
He might be.
And under those circumstances, maybe you stay. But my point being that, I don't think he, at this point, to come back again would basically be saying one of two things. One, I really want to come back and see this team, maximize its potential and win 10. Or I'm making so much money that it makes no sense for me to go to the NFL. Or I'm not yet ready to go to the NFL and I need my draft stock to improve. But that's a lot of football games to play, and there is a part of me that after this season would say he's done everything he could do. Let's see what Logan Smothers can do, or let's see what Harper can do. But I'm the same guy that said they shouldn't have played in a bowl game, and I was a voice in the wilderness on that. I was like, don't play it. Don't play this game. Don't play the bowl game. Just leave the season where it's at. They voted on that, and every other media member was like, I can't. Bill Moose couldn't believe it. I can't believe it. Well, it's just time, But I was also the person that was really surprised that all those defensive players came back.
I think the more the season's gone on, the more I think Martinez is coming back. Scott Frost said during that Big Red Blitz preseason that he wants Martinez back, and he's invested a bunch in him. So, I think that's a part that you have to acknowledge. They want you to come back. That's not always the case with some of these guys.
How many of those don't you think they want pretty much every junior to come back if they're willing?
Probably. But, that's the first piece that has to fall. And then, if you're Martinez, it's been put out there that he could transfer. I can't imagine that he would transfer.
I've put that out there.
I can't see that.
I'm not putting it out there because I think he would,
after 4
he's
years
mad
here.
at this place, but
I just don't. It's possible.
To Sam's point, he could be supercharged if he goes to the right place. And if you want to talk about upping your draft stock, that's something to consider.
I think he's the kind of human being who would be like, he would never do it. I don't deep down, I don't think he could do it. But I think if he ever were to do it, he would be the kind of person that'd be like, I cannot go somewhere where we would ever play Nebraska. He wouldn't go to another Big Ten team. He'd go to Stanford and there might be a system in which he could join where it would be of tangible, it would be of intangible help to him to learn a different offense.
But then you look at the other options, why submit yourself to the crapshoot of the NFL and maybe get drafted and maybe be in an undrafted free agent. When you come back to Nebraska, set a whole bunch of records, win some games against what's going to be an easier schedule than they're playing, and probably make six figures in NIL money and be the man. Like, that's not so bad. Yeah, you're talking about taking some hits and everything, but you've invested this much. What's one more year in the system
and you would also,
being the guy?
You hope that offensive line matures, gets better. And they'll have the full complement of weapons for the most part. I mean, that's.
But it's
could be a
funny,
pretty good
isn't it?
gig.
Because
sometimes I think people just they want to move on.
Could be.
I just don't get that sense.
Yeah,
from
do you get
him.
that vibe from him specifically?
No, I'm talking about nope, I don't. I don't get that vibe at all. I'm speaking generally. I'm speaking from a general philosophical point of view. The same one I used to say they shouldn't have played in a bowl game, and the same one that was very surprised that all of these defensive players came back, and the same one that said that one player wasn't going to be a captain. Like I'm going with my discernment. Like I just don't. I think it's possible that he could come back. I think it's possible that all those juniors could come back. In theory,
well, sure.
I think. Let me put it this way: there's a player on the volleyball team that shouldn't have come back and did, and made a lot of money in NIL and ain't playing. Now that wouldn't happen to Martinez, I don't think. I don't. But again, you have all these these guys that you're recruiting behind him, and not just at that position, but a lot of different positions. And I'm surprised Will Honus is. I guess I'm not really surprised he's coming back. Nebraska has plenty of inside linebackers. They have a lot of young inside linebackers. Like if I'm one of the young guys in the room, I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll wait until 2023 because obviously that guy's already started for 2 years and he needs a 7th year of football. Like that's a natural human reaction.
Right.
And so, there's things about we'll see. Like I could envision them wanting all of those juniors to come back. I could envision some of those juniors coming back. And I could envision some of them going, you know what? Seinfeld, I've had enough.
Yeah.
That's
it for me.
To move on.
Yep.
Like I've done what I wanted to do here, and I've enjoyed my time. And we went through this. You should have heard the knockdown, drag out arguments we had in 2019 over the Fort Dame thing. I mean, it was. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it.
What do you mean you don't believe in it?
You already know. I don't believe in holding guys to 4 games if you think they can play 10. I don't believe in getting cute. You either redshirt a person and you say you're not going to play, or you play somebody as much as you think they're good enough to play. Now, if that's only 4 games, then so be it. Like Harburg, he's only good enough to play. He's not. I wouldn't be opposed to that. But I was opposed to the let's not play Luke McCaffrey more than 4 games because we need to make sure that we protect some red shirt that doesn't matter anymore. Like that kind of thing. I was against that. Like you don't.
The discussion's been muddled by the pandemic year and all the eligibility, and that's really worked against them in hindsight.
I don't think they need to worry about trying to win some year back for Teddy either. Just let's move on. He's got 3 more years. He's probably going to play in the NFL.
The injury thing is different. The injury wrinkle is different. When they had come over to your side when it was, okay, Teddy's our best left tackle. They were they were on that path.
Yes.
But now that he's injured, I think it's worth fighting for.
Maybe. I think it's and again, this is so far off the beaten path at this point, but I believe in a what do you call it? A bandwidth. Think of a broadband system and how much data is used up. I wouldn't use up an inch of data fighting for it. That guy's got 3 years left, and he's probably going to start all 3 years. And if the push comes to shove in 2025, that you need a left tackle to come back and do it then. But I understand. I understand how that stuff works. I understand that, and I'm just saying that it used to be a lot simpler than that. It used to be so much simpler, where guys just left after 4 years, and that's what they did. Goodbye. And there wasn't all of this wrangling and moving pieces around the chessboard. And it's benefited the defense, I'll grant you that. JoJo Doman's return is huge.
And it's benefiting other schools. So shouldn't you try to keep up to a certain degree?
It's a legitimate question. It is. It's benefit. We see the profit. We don't always see the cost. if that makes sense. Sometimes you have a profit in bringing players back and putting more time into them, but we ignore the cost of there's these players over here that just didn't get as much developmental time. That'll be a question they have to ask. I assume with Martinez, it's like, hey, let's just run it back. Let's do it again. And I think Nebraska would be better off if he came back. I could just see him wanting to go to the NFL. He's played a lot of football here. You've done something when you've done that for 4 years. Like, maybe you want to change the scenery. Does NIL change it? Maybe.
I also think
that's tricky too, though. Man,
the idea that they're so much more confident in where they are on a trajectory right now, and the idea that they're getting so close, like if he thinks that next year could really be a special year,
it could be.
I think that changes the equation too.
It could. I think those are all considerations. Those are all considerations. Yeah, we'll see. But those questions loom over the program. This is why they haven't recruited players to this class.
Mm-hmm.
They have 8 signees. This is the one year that you could literally sign 32 high school players if you wanted to. You could sign as like a giant class of high school guys that you could say in 2025 these guys are going to be so good. Nebraska's not doing it.
That's true.
They're leaving the scholarships on the table, and they're like, nope. We don't know how many spots we're going to have, and what that translated, that means our extra 17 recruits are the juniors who we hope stay.
Right. It's who they hope stay, and it's, I think, a commitment to the transfer portal more so than they've ever done too. I think we're going to see a lot of that, which is fine. They've had success.
I think
there.
That's an interesting way to go. I agree with you.
Trey Neal, Darian Daniels, Samori Toure, they've done okay.
We should at some point after the season rank the transfers they've had since Frost got here. Toure's probably at the top. Toure or Darian Daniels?
Daniels was a captain, which
2.
was more of a reflection of the program, but yeah, totally. Should we go to picks?
Yeah, let's go to picks. I'm going to record this because I don't have my notebook in here. Evan and I went 5-7 last week. Jimmy went 6-6. We all struggled.
Failing upward.
We had a lot of disparate picks, and it was tough. It was tough. Hold on.
It's tough sledding out there for.
Oh, Jimmy, you're kicking our butt. Who are we kidding?
No, I'm talking about just college football in general.
It's getting hard out here.
It was.
All right, you ready?
Crazy week.
It was a great week. Central Florida at Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
They've made me believers. Cincinnati,
a lot of points. I'm guessing that'll be a 55-42 kind of game. Michigan State at Indiana. We don't know if Michael Penix is going to play, but my hunch is no.
Isn't that that should be on Michael Penix's college football file? That should be the stamp.
I should.
Michigan State.
Questionable. Or what are you? Probable. Michigan State for Jimmy.
Yeah, Michigan State.
Michigan State for me. Oklahoma State at Texas. Texas coming off a devastating loss. Okie State undefeated on the road.
Give me Texas. I still like what I'm seeing from Texas.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like this is a game.
Oklahoma State's limited. Like, Spencer Sanders is just not that guy. He's not.
Limited.
I agree. Texas.
We're agreeing all agreed so far. Auburn, Arkansas.
Ooh.
I'll take Arkansas.
At Arkansas?
At Arkansas.
Now, this is a game. I know I just took Texas, willingly ignoring this. I think this is a game where Arkansas might be feeling a little bit of that emotional drawback, and Auburn's still, even though they're a ways down the SEC stand, I'm taking Auburn.
That disappoints me because I'm also taking Auburn.
Can't quit that Bo Nix. Can't quit him.
Arkansas for me. Florida, LSU. Maybe Ed Ogeron's last stand.
Yeah.
By the way, they won it last year. They beat Florida. Great Florida team.
Especially if it's bad enough. Florida.
Same. Gators.
Florida. Gators. Go Florida.
Nice.
Go Gators. Rutgers, Northwestern.
Whew.
3-point line here.
Oh, in favor of Northwestern?
Of Rutgers.
Okay. Yeah, I got Rutgers.
All right. It'll be about 10,000 people at Ryan. More hot dogs for me at Mustard's last stand.
I can't buy Northwestern this year. Rutgers.
Rutgers for me as well. BYU at Baylor.
Wow. That's a good game.
Funny
Interesting game.
BYU lost last week to Boise.
Yeah.
Bit of a culture clash in that one.
Something. BYU.
Going Baylor.
I'll take Baylor. Kentucky, Georgia.
Georgia.
Georgia's on a roll. Georgia.
I believe Georgia wins that one. Ole Miss, Tennessee. This is in Neyland Stadium.
A fun atmosphere for Tennessee, but I'll go Ole Miss.
Tennessee for me.
Oh.
Really?
Yeah.
Going Ole Miss as well.
Gus Malzahn against Lane Kiffin? No, it's not Gus Malzahn. It's Josh Heupel. There's going to be some heat there. Ole Miss for you?
Ole Miss for me.
Tennessee for me. Army, Wisconsin.
That game will be over in 2 hours.
What a
At
matchup.
night.
What a matchup.
What a weird game for Wisconsin's scheduled like trash this year. This is not a game you
It
want to play.
matches their play.
I mean, what genius over there thought it'd be a good idea to play Notre Dame, Michigan, Penn State? I mean, they got screwed on their schedule by the Big Ten. Let's play Penn State, Notre Dame, Michigan. Oh, let's throw Army in. Like, Wisconsin chose to play Army in October.
Strange.
That's a strange call.
It is strange. I kind of like it, though. I like
I like it.
The
Yeah, I don't mind
clash.
it either.
I wouldn't like it if I were Wisconsin.
Sure. I'll take Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin.
Assignment football.
It's going to be a quick game.
It is going to be a quick game, and it's fascinating because Army can really run it, and Wisconsin really stops the run. I'm going to take Wisconsin, but I don't know, it's a weird game. Farmageddon. Iowa State, Kansas State, in Manhattan.
In Manhattan, man. Making me nostalgic. I will take Kansas State.
Once upon a time, you could have been at this
I
game,
could have been.
covering two better teams. Well, I don't. That's not true. I don't
don't
think.
know. Yeah,
I
I don't
actually
think-
don't think Kansas.
In the
State's better than
multiverse,
Nebraska.
yeah, you
I
could
don't
have been
either.
there. Yeah. Iowa State. I think Iowa State finds a way. It hasn't been their year. I think they pull it out.
Iowa State. And lastly, Nebraska, Minnesota. We all got this one wrong last week.
We did. I'll take Nebraska. I think they win big.
Okay.
I think Nebraska does it too. I think they've figured something out. Like there just isn't the yo-yo that this team has been for so long. This last 5 weeks or so, I think Nebraska translates what they've done and they beat Minnesota.
I'll take Nebraska, but I appreciate Jimmy's confidence. Jimmy hasn't watched much Nebraska football.
That's
He
fair.
is.
But
He does not know the capability of this team to completely screw up a game.
I just think they're going to stop the run,
Oh,
and I think if you do that, I don't know what Minnesota's bringing to the table.
You're bringing total logic to the discussion. You really are. Like this is totally what the logic would tell you to do. I'm sure that Bill Connolly and S&P Plus will have this as a 11-point Nebraska win, and yet it's Nebraska at Minnesota, and it is what it is. I'll take Nebraska, but I don't like the look of it.
The one thing I'd say is if Nebraska had beaten Illinois and they hadn't had sort of their bad loss, I'd be more nervous about this one for them. I feel like getting that Illinois one out of the way, I just don't see them failing to show up. I think it'll be a close game, but I don't think they're going to lay a huge egg.
That's fair. Losing to Illinois would be like any of us getting a D on an English exam. I'd be just like, what happened there?
Yeah,
I don't know.
you didn't read the book.
I had I didn't read the book. You know, one time in high school, I didn't read the book.
Oh, many times in high school I didn't read the
And
book.
I got caught.
I did a lot of Spark Notes in my day.
But I got caught
Oh,
because we were doing questions in class, and our teacher was like, asking everybody questions, and I got a question I didn't know the answer to. And I was
Did you try to make something up?
Kind of.
It's always a bad feeling.
It is. Because,
if you pull it off,
you're scrambling.
it's a good feeling. It's a great feeling.
It
You just have
was-
to be general and hope that the teacher is just not on their game. We'll let you slide.
It was a book of Ralph Waldo Emerson essays. Believe that?
It's pretty good for high school.
Wow. Nice.
Oh, it was all right.
All right. Well, we are going to Minnesota this weekend. We'll see how Nebraska does. Heading into their bye, what the tenor will be with a couple 2-game seasons after that. Should be fun. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the game.